You hear the creak of timber first, the groan of a ship's hull flexing against the channel swell, slow and rhythmic, like something breathing in its sleep. Then the smell hits, salt air, tar, and underneath it something sharper. Linseed oil, lead white, the chemical bite of fresh paint sealed under cloth. Now you see it, a crate lashed to the cabin floor. Inside, wrapped in linen and wax, a single oak panel, and on that panel, a woman's face, pale, round, perfectly symmetrical, framed in a gold-threaded headdress. The brushwork is flawless, each fold of fabric rendered with the precision of a man who knows that kings don't just want beauty. They want proof of beauty they can hold in their hands. It's the summer of 1539. This painting is crossing the English Channel, and inside the mind of the most powerful minister in England, a single calculation is running. If the king likes this face, England gets a Protestant alliance with the German princes, the Catholic powers stay divided, and Thomas Cromwell, a blacksmith's son from Putney who has already destroyed the Pope's authority, dissolved 800 monasteries, and executed a queen, remains untouchable. If the king doesn't like this face, everything falls apart. Hans Holbein the Younger painted this portrait. He was the best in Europe. He was also working for Cromwell. And here's what Cromwell didn't anticipate. Holbein was too good at his job. Now, if you've seen The Tudors or A Man for All Seasons, you think you know Thomas Cromwell, the scheming minister, the cold-blooded fixer who destroyed the saintly Thomas More. Hollywood has spent 60 years selling you one version of this man, the villain lurking behind the throne. What they don't show you is the scale of what he actually built, the absurd smallness of what destroyed him, and the fact that the legal weapon he invented to protect his king was the exact weapon turned against him, without a trial. Welcome to Unleashed Secrets, where we dig into the blood-soaked truths history tried to bury. You've heard the name Thomas Cromwell. You think this is a story about Tudor politics? It's not. It's the story of the most sophisticated political mind in 16th century Europe, brought down because one woman didn't look like her painting. By the end of this, you'll know 3 things most people never learn. First, how a single portrait by Hans Holbein became the most dangerous painting in English history. Second, how Cromwell invented a legal mechanism that could condemn anyone in England without trial, and then became its most famous victim. Third, the detail about his execution that tells you everything you need to know about how Henry VIII's court actually worked. We're building a community of 10,000 truth seekers, and we need you to get there. Click subscribe. This is the story of how one man dismantled the medieval world with paperwork and was destroyed by a painted face. To understand how a portrait killed the most powerful minister in England, you need to understand how a blacksmith's son from Putney got there in the first place. Thomas Cromwell was born around 1485. The exact date is uncertain, in Putney, south of London. His father, Walter Cromwell, was a brewer, blacksmith, and fuller, and according to local court records examined by dyer-maid McCulloch in Thomas Cromwell. A Life, 2018, Walter was a man repeatedly fined for assault and for watering down his ale. Young Thomas grew up in a household where fists decided most arguments. He left England as a teenager. What followed reads like invention, but it's documented. He fought as a mercenary in the French campaigns in Italy, apprenticed with Florentine bankers, studied law without attending a university, and returned to England fluent in Latin, French, and Italian. A self-made polyglot with a soldier's nerve and a banker's mind. By the late 1520s, he was working for Cardinal Wolsey, the most powerful churchman in England. When Wolsey fell in 1529 for failing to secure Henry's annulment, every associate ran. Cromwell didn't. He entered Parliament, defended Wolsey publicly, and caught the attention of the king. Here's what happened next. Henry wanted his marriage to Catherine of Aragon annulled. The Pope refused. Every advisor said, negotiate. Cromwell said something different. You don't need the Pope. You need Parliament. Geoffrey Elton, in The Tudor Revolution in Government, 1953, argues that what Cromwell built between 1532 and 1540 was nothing less than the modern sovereign state. He drafted the Act of Supremacy in 1534, making the king, not the Pope, head of the Church of England. He oversaw the dissolution of the monasteries, 800 religious houses liquidated in 4 years. That's one monastery dissolved every 48 hours, running without pause, like a demolition schedule that began the month Anne Boleyn died and didn't stop until Cromwell himself was arrested. It was the largest forced transfer of property in English history, like a hostile corporate acquisition, except the corporation was the Catholic Church, and the assets were 9 centuries of accumulated land, gold, and grain. The same hands that had worked leather in Putney were now signing warrants that rewrote the religious map of Europe. Think about what this means. A man with no noble blood, no university degree, no dynastic connections, running England, not as a figurehead, as the architect. By 1539, Thomas Cromwell was Earl of Essex, Lord Privy Seal, Vicegerent in Spirituals. He had survived the fall of Anne Boleyn, which he had personally engineered. He had survived the Pilgrimage of Grace, the largest popular rebellion of Henry's reign. He had outmaneuvered every rival, outlasted every faction, deflected every whispered accusation at court. He had one vulnerability left, and it was drying on an easel in Hans Holbein's studio. Here's the thing about Henry VIII that most people get wrong. He wasn't irrational. He was operating inside a logic that was internally coherent, and that logic made the Cleves marriage not just desirable, but existential. By 1539, England was isolated. Henry had broken with Rome. Catholic Europe, France under Francis I and the Holy Roman Empire under Charles V, had signed the Treaty of Toledo and were threatening a joint invasion. England needed allies. The only available Protestant allies were the German princes of the Schmalkaldic League, and the fastest path to that alliance was a marriage. So how do you secure a marriage alliance when the king can't meet the bride? You send a painter. Modern historians call this portrait diplomacy, the practice of dispatching court painters to produce flattering likenesses of prospective brides for royal review. Cromwell didn't invent the practice, but he industrialized it. He turned portrait diplomacy into a system, like a 16th century matchmaking service where the profile pictures were painted by the finest artist in Europe and the stakes were the survival of a nation. He dispatched Holbein to the Duchy of Cleves to paint Anne, the Duke's sister. Holbein produced the portrait that now hangs in the Louvre. It shows a composed, dignified face, pleasant, symmetrical, exactly what diplomatic portraiture was designed to deliver. This wasn't deception. This was protocol. David Starkey, in 6 Wives, The Queens of Henry VIII, 2003, notes that every diplomatic portrait of this era was understood to be a courtesy, not a photograph. Everyone at court knew the rules of this game. Everyone except, apparently, the king, who expected the woman in the painting to step out of the frame. And here's where you need to understand the weapon Cromwell had built, because it's the weapon that killed him. Over the previous decade, Cromwell had perfected the act of attainder. Modern scholars sometimes call this legislative execution, and the term is precise. It was a parliamentary statute that could declare any person guilty of treason and sentence them to death. No jury, no defense, no evidence presented in open court. Parliament simply voted, the king signed, and the accused was legally dead. Think about what this actually meant in practice. Under this mechanism, Parliament could declare you guilty of a crime you hadn't committed, sentence you to death for it, and confiscate everything you owned, your title, your lands, your family's inheritance, all in a single afternoon session. You couldn't challenge it. You couldn't appeal it. You couldn't even be present when it happened. It was like a corporate termination clause written into the Constitution, except the termination was literal, and the severance package was a scaffold. Cromwell had used legislative execution against the Marquis of Exeter in 1538. He had used it against the Pole family. He had refined it into the most efficient weapon in Tudor politics. Remember this mechanism. It returns. Before we reach the moment everything breaks, there's a scene most histories skip. In the summer of 1540, from a cell in the Tower of London, Thomas Cromwell wrote a letter to Henry VIII. It survives. You can read it today in the National Archives. It is not the letter of a man who has collapsed. It is the letter of a man who knows the system because he built it, and who is making one final, precise, strategic argument for his own survival. Imagine this for a moment. You'd spent a decade building the most powerful administrative machine England had ever seen. You'd rewritten the laws, restructured the courts, dissolved an entire church. You'd watched Wolsey fall and learned the lesson. Loyalty without leverage is suicide. You'd survived every faction, every plot, every whisper. And now you're sitting in a stone cell in the Tower, the same tower you'd sent others to. And the only tool you have left is the one you've always trusted. A pen, a piece of paper, an argument. So you don't beg, you itemize. You list your services to the Crown, point by point, with the administrative precision that defined your entire career. You address the charges with legal specificity. You remind the king what you built, what you sacrificed. You close with an appeal not to mercy, but to self-interest. You still need me. McCulloch describes this letter as one of the most remarkable documents of the Tudor period, not for its emotion, but for its competence. Even facing death, Cromwell fought the machine with paperwork. Henry read the letter. According to the French ambassador Charles de Marillac, who reports the scene with the detached precision of a man filing a diplomatic dispatch, as if a king's tears were just another data point. Henry wept. Then he signed the execution warrant anyway. Here's the detail that changes everything about this story. Holbein wasn't painting just one woman. He was a component in the portrait diplomacy machine. Before Anne of Cleves, Holbein had been dispatched to paint Christina of Denmark, Duchess of Milan. The portrait, which still hangs in the National Gallery, is luminous. Henry reportedly fell in love with it. But Christina rejected the proposal. According to a dispatch from the imperial ambassador Eustace Chapuis, whose correspondence survives in the Vienna archives, she reportedly quipped that if she had two heads, she'd happily offer one to the King of England. Read that again. A 16-year-old duchess cracked a decapitation joke to reject the most powerful king in Europe. That tells you what portrait diplomacy looked like from the other side. The same man who had outmaneuvered the Vatican, dissolved an entire monastic civilization, and rewritten the English Constitution, staked his career on a portrait he couldn't fact-check. He had never met Anne of Cleves. He had only seen the painting. This was standard. This was procedure. This was how it was done. January 1st, 1540. Rochester, Kent. Henry VIII rides out to meet Anne of Cleves in person. He arrives in disguise, an old courtly tradition, the romantic king surprising his bride. He walks into the room. He sees her. The reaction is immediate, visceral, physical. He pulls aside Sir Anthony Browne. The words, as recorded by the chronicler Edward Hall in Hall's Chronicle, are blunt. I like her not. 3 words. the man who had severed England from Rome, who had rewritten a constitution, who had dissolved 800 monasteries, beheaded a wife, and stared down an empire. That man's entire political architecture now balanced on 3 words about a woman's face. Henry was trapped. The diplomatic treaty was signed. He had no legal exit. On January 6, 1540, he married Anne of Cleves and reportedly told Cromwell the following morning that he had been unable to consummate the marriage. Starkey documents the king's complaints to his physicians in clinical detail. Henry spoke about Anne's body with an almost medical revulsion. The marriage lasted 6 months. The king's fury didn't dissipate. It calcified, and calcified fury needs a target. June 10, 1540, a meeting of the Privy Council. Cromwell walks in expecting business. The Duke of Norfolk, his rival for a decade, stands, crosses the room, and rips the Order of the Garter from Cromwell's neck. Guards seize him. He is arrested on charges of treason and heresy. No warning, no preparation. And here is the detail that contains the entire story in a single legal fact. Thomas Cromwell was condemned by an act of attainder, by legislative execution, the same instrument he had perfected. The parliamentary weapon that killed without trial, without jury, without defense, the weapon he had sharpened into the most efficient tool in Tudor politics, was now pointed at the man who had forged it. The architect of the machine fed into the machine. He was executed on July 28, 1540, on Tower Hill. The executioner, according to Hall's account, was inexperienced. Hall describes the scene with the flatness of a clerk, noting a procedural irregularity. Like a man recording a delayed shipment, not a botched decapitation. The first blow hit the back of Cromwell's skull, not his neck. It took 3 strokes to sever his head. The man who had orchestrated the most surgically precise political operations in English history died the messiest public death in London that decade. This was procedure. This was efficiency. This was the system working exactly as designed, just not for the man who designed it. We'll never know for certain what Henry felt in the weeks that followed. But we know what he said. According to Charles Wriothesley's Chronicle of England, within months Henry was lamenting openly at court that his counselors had driven away the most faithful servant he ever had. He blamed Norfolk. He blamed Gardiner. He never blamed himself. This was revision. This was convenience. This was a king rewriting history while the blood was still drying on the straw. The Holbein portrait of Anne of Cleves still hangs in the Louvre. Historians still argue about how much it flattered. Some, like Starkey, insist Holbein softened significantly. Others, like McCulloch, suggest Anne may simply have been plain rather than ugly, and that Henry's disgust was amplified by expectation. True? Exaggerated? We don't know. What we know is that the gap between paint and skin cost a man his head, and legislative execution, Cromwell's most lethal invention, outlived him by centuries. Parliament used Attainder against the Earl of Strafford in 1641. It appeared in the proceedings surrounding Charles I. The legal weapon a minister had forged to serve an absolute monarch helped, 1 century later, to execute one. 500 years later, Hilary Mantel published Wolf Hall, 2009, and Bring Up the Bodies, 2012, 2 novels that, for the first time in 4 centuries, told the story from Cromwell's perspective. The facts didn't change. The camera moved. 2 Booker Prizes followed. The monster became the protagonist. The same civilization that gave us parliamentary sovereignty also gave us parliamentary murder without trial. Same author, same desk, same instrument. Thomas Cromwell dismantled the Pope's authority with legislation. He dissolved 800 monasteries with accounting ledgers. He removed a queen with manufactured evidence. He rewired the English state so thoroughly that Elton called it a revolution in government. He was destroyed because a painting was too flattering. He built the legal machine that killed without trial. The machine killed him without trial. He trusted portrait diplomacy, the system he'd engineered, the system that had always delivered. The portrait told the truth. Just not the truth the king wanted to see. You hear it again? If you listen, the creak of timber, a ship crossing the channel. Inside, a painting wrapped in linen. A woman's face, pale, round, perfectly symmetrical. It still hangs in the Louvre. It is still beautiful, and the man who commissioned it has been dead for almost 500 years. Destroyed not by politics, not by theology, not by treason, but by the distance between paint and skin.